Let's get right into it. I mean, we just heard about a lot of the use cases this morning. You're in a unique position. You're with one of the largest telecommunication providers in the world. Give me your sense of the high impact use cases that you see that are going to really change the dynamics for Verizon.
Thank you. Great question. And are you specifically asking the question on AI, generative AI? Because there are
this is
generative AI.
This is generative AI, yeah.
Okay.
But if you want to widen it up and go beyond generative AI, I think that's useful for the audience.
Okay, I'll stay within the scope. I'll stay within generative AI. So specifically Verizon is really, I think there are lots of, I think yesterday I was mentioning, there are lots of use cases. But when we look into the generative AI use cases, I'll give you a premise. AI was there forever, for a long time, and generative AI is in the last few years. And we always see AI, when AI was introduced, it was helping a segment of folks. When I say segment, it is the decision, it helped in decision-making side. It helped the managers and specific functions. When we looked into generative AI, the blast radius is much more. And specifically when I look into the use cases, and we really look at generative AI use cases that reduces the cognitive load of our employees. What do I mean with that? So the employees, and when we think about a customer care representative solving the problem of customers, they go through a plethora of documents. And we have thousands of OSDs. It is all the manuals we have. And similarly, in the network engineering side, they go through lots of manuals to debug a problem in the network. So instead of memorizing all the documents and going through the documents and reading the documents, and we really looked at that as a big use case where you can ask the question and you get the answer. If you ingest the document and keep the document in the right shape and form, you'll be able to get the answer in hand. What does it do? So take an example of a call center. In the call center, what do the rep do? So as soon as the customer asks, they start opening the knowledge manager and they start browsing through the document on the side. Their 80% of mind is here in going through the document, 20% they are trying to engage with the customer, or they put the customer on hold and they start browsing the document. And now, as the customer talks, you start questioning and you get the answer. And the team also now innovated and provided a proactive listening. So it listens to the call and start giving the nudges then and there. Hey, for this question, this is the answer, refer this. So that way, whole time, the rep is able to concentrate. Instead of 20%, 100% they are able to focus on customer and they are able to answer that. That is one thing, taking the cognitive overload. And second thing, augment the creativity. So I'll give an example of the whole marketing copy creation or the content, the campaign creation. So there are lots of information that goes in when the campaign gets created. And now when we think about personalizing the campaign for customer, you need to understand the demographics of the customer to personalize the campaign for one customer. So instead of going through lots of documents and create the campaign and communication, there they use generative AI. So there it helps. Third area, there are lots of routine tasks the reps do, or employees do. What do they do? As soon as the call is over, they start typing the comments. The whole what they discuss, they try to put the comments. Instead, if you have the call transcript that is coming on the side, the generative AI, the API can take the whole call transcript, summarize and store it. So next time when the customer calls or any time, to have context, you have a very short snippet of what was discussed prior to this and they'll be able to do. Similarly, we also have Copilot where it gives the context and nudges then and there throughout the flow when the customer goes through the experience. I think there are multiple areas. So it is not about decision making. It is about being an augmentation, being a personal assistant. So today, personal assistants are there for leaders. And tomorrow, this generative AI becomes a personal assistant for each and every individual, providing the right kind of context and information for them to take the call completely or do the task completely.
Yeah.
That's
So the theme which is resonating through most of the 2 days here is focus on customer experience. You actually also talked about personalization, which is another area. Give me a sense for some of the tooling, and you talk about context aware. I mean, Verizon has vast amounts of data in the network. So how do you make that context aware for some of these call center agents and other people that are going to be dependent on that data? And what's some of the tooling that you're using in your environment?
So definitely data is the key, and I always, maybe if I ask my data team, that team always say that we are the people who make the food in the kitchen, right? And we are not the people who are serving, we are not the people who are tasting, but that is very important, and that's what, and as you said, we are sitting on mines of data. So every day, to give context, every day we ingest almost around 70 billion data elements. So 70 billion data elements we ingest from 30,000 or 32,000 data sources and millions of equipments which are in the field. So all of them gives us 70 billion data. Multiply that, it is trillions of data in a month and more than that in a year. So the key is you really need to find the needle from the haystack. There are so much data, you really need to know which data you need to use when. And that's where organizing the data is the key. It's almost like going to a library and trying to find a book from the library. So similarly, you going through the whole data set and identifying which data set I need to use where. So there is so much of discipline, and I would say here there is more science involved here. So what we do is we clearly catalog all the data that comes to the warehouse. That's the first step, right? We catalog the data. What do we mean by cataloging? We clearly provide the context around the data. We talk about, hey, this is a data element. This data element belongs to this domain, this subdomain, providing the taxonomy, which can be understandable for the technology, at the same time taxonomy that can be used for pulling the data out. Okay. We call that as technical taxonomy and the business taxonomy. We give all of them, and on top of it, we also put lots of constraints on what kind of quality rules we need to apply on top of that data element. So we do that for all the data elements that are coming to the warehouse. And when the data comes in, and that becomes crucial. So this is one part. Then putting all the automation to run on top of it. So this is about, because it's humanly impossible to do all the cataloging and taxonomy and everything. So we use lots of automation to do the data management. Okay. And on top of it, we also run the quality rules on top. That is something we do. So these things are very critical for the models to understand the context. Then when we do all these things, we talked about network. Along with that, this is all the customer data. We bring all the related data. When I talk about relative data, it is the data about the network, data about the customer, data about the distribution. So all the data we bring in so that it will be able to connect all the data and get the connected context. It is not about just getting the network context. It is about the network experience of a customer. A network experience of the customer that is driving the churn, that is driving the propensity to buy. So all of them are the connected context we need to bring in. So that connectedness of the data and having that taxonomy and having a very strong data management practice is the key. And that is what we do all the time.
We were talking earlier too, and I think one of the things that's pretty amazing about what Verizon's done is not only are you harvesting the data, but you're making it accessible to a wide set of the organization. I think that's one of the issues that was raised earlier yesterday in yesterday's panel around data hoarding. Can you shed some more light on your process there and even the platforms that actually might be helpful for other groups within Verizon that might need to get access to that data platform?
That's right. So I would say this is an evolution by itself. So when we talked about data, maybe many years before, data was always considered as an asset of a department, right? Every department had their own warehouse, and they never shared the data because they felt that this is my asset and I cannot share it. That's how it was. Culturally, it took definitely lots of effort and the leadership buy-in to bring all the data to a common place. So now we have the entire enterprise data in a common place, which is maintained by a common team, where the connectedness is completely established. And in the common platform, you'll be able to pull the network data and see how that is correlated with customer and vice versa. Hey, look into where the customer demands are, where the prospects are. Okay, these are all the areas we need to invest in network. So you'll be able to do lots of cross-domain correlation with that. While we do that, one critical thing is the access to the data. We cannot make the data accessible by everyone for every data. So there is a very strong governance that is employed on top of it, where we clearly say that, hey, if you are in marketing, you can access, these are all the domain access, domain data you can access from the marketing. Similarly, if you are in network engineering, you can access all the network data, but along with that, these are all the other domain data you can access. There is a very clear access control mechanism that is employed on top of it. That's where having the connected data in a platform that is scalable, and on top of it, having the right governance in managing the data and providing the right access is the key.
I think one of the other shifts that we're seeing in the market right now, data used to be enclosed systems, a lot of the management systems where access to that, even with some of your suppliers, wasn't possible. And now we're seeing more of an open ecosystem where you get access to that data. Can you give us a sense for maybe how Verizon is working with the wider ecosystem to get access to this critical data? I mean, it's your data, but make sure that you're able to utilize that for some of the departments, but also some of the use cases that develop over the next few years.
So when we talk about accessing the data of the ecosystem, you're talking about the third-party data.
Yeah.
And giving our data to third party. So is that what you're asking about?
Well, it's more it's more the systems and tooling that you'll be using in your environment, and making sure that's open to you. So if there's data, for example, being collected on the network, that can be exposed in your platform to others in the organization.
That's right. So when we look into Verizon as an organization, whatever the tools or platforms that we use from the system perspective. So first of all, data comes from systems. It is not like data is generated in the warehouse. It all comes from the systems. So when we talk about systems, there are homegrown systems, and also there are systems which are bought and deployed in our ecosystem. So when we work on the contract with these providers, we always have the contract very clearly written with these product companies saying, this data is owned by us, and that data should be pushed to the warehouse. And we also have a very clear data retention policy that is written with all the contractors with whom we work with. Similarly, when we work with hyperscalers, we also ensure that the data is protected in our environment, because we work with hyperscalers, we bring all the data, but at the same time, we ensure that we put all the guardrails around our data, though it sits in the hyperscaler environment. So we definitely keep that one also. From tooling perspective, on top of it, definitely we use lots of tools for data management, for data quality, data observability, data lineage. All of them we use lots of tools. And even with generative AI now, for pre-processing, everything we use tools, because when we talk about getting the documents and storing that in the warehouse, it is all unstructured document, and we really need to vectorize, or we need to create a knowledge graph and store it in our warehouse. For all of them, we use the tools, but with all of them, we are very clearly having the contract to ensure that what data they can store and what data should be shared with us. And if they bring any intelligence, that proprietary of that intelligence is owned by us.
Okay, excellent. We've got about 5 minutes left in the session, so I do want to open it up to the audience. Do we have a mic in the room? Got a question right here.
Yeah.
Here comes a mic. I just want to make sure everybody can hear the question.
Hi, Kalyani. Thank you for the insights. Most of this Gen AI or even AI we use a lot in networks. All of this is mostly on the internal side, isn't it? We consume that guidance that comes out of those models. We refine our services. But when we are investing so much efforts, brain, everything into this, what is the impact the end user customer will see? In other words, when they are calling us like customer contact points, journeys, we know. But when we are showing that we are now AI-enabled network, AI-enabled overall company, for an ordinary customer, they get 4-6 lines of transfer. They come into our play. How do they see the impact that, hey, whether they are streaming at home, barbecue party or tailgate parties, I made a great decision. Where is that wow factor for the end customer?
Can you come back on the last part?
No, the last part was essentially all these things we are doing and investing a whole lot of to make it more efficient services, right? Predictive, engaging and having a customer experience. But most of it is technical, which is kind of transparent to the end user. For the end user, where is that wow factor when they switch to this? They are doing ordinary work, streaming movies, watching parties, tailgate parties, where they feel that, wow, this is what is my totally new value addition. Where is that wow factor?
Yeah.
Where do you see that we delivering that eventually?
I would say there are things. See, I would say in network, I'm taking network and then I'll come to customer.
Yeah.
So in network, there are lots of AIs that are happening behind the scene, because of which the customer sees the service. Customer gets a service that is not interrupted or uninterrupted service. The customer gets because of all the predictive and proactive actions that are happening in network. As Pawan talked about last time, the amount of anomaly detections that are happening and the predictives that are happening, even before the experience goes through a threshold that really creates a bad experience for the customer, there are closed loop automation that are happening in the network that takes corrective action then and there, because of which customer is not seeing an interruption in the service they have in their video or data or when they talk to someone. So I would say if the customer, I don't want the customer to say aha or anything at that time, because the customer has to continue to do whatever they are doing. So that is, I would say that is a silent aha moment that we get when the customer does not go through any, because the team watches on the amount of anomalies that are being detected and closed. If the anomaly is detected and not closed, definitely it is not a carrot, it is a stick for us. So that's the constant thing that we do. From the customer experience side, when they come to channel, I'll take the predictive and generative separately, because generative is yet to mature, but from predictive side, we do lots of recommendation when they go to the channel. When we recommend a product, when we recommend a device, when we recommend an accessory and a service and perks, those things, AIs work seamlessly, irrespective of whether you go to a store or go to .com. There is no difference. Or you go to a mobile application, all the recommendations that comes through, that is personalization, that is driven by AI. So that is how you get a connected experience when the customer gets similar recommendations when they do something in the mobile, they react on it, immediately the model learns and they go to .com, it'll be a very different experience because the learning happens on the side. And similarly, when they go through experience, this is something the team is working on right now. Now we are tracing each and every step of the journey the customer goes through. The journey can be an interaction, journey can be a transaction that is initiated by Verizon, or journey can be a network experience. All of them we are stitching to ensure that we monitor the journey proactively and take corrective action so that at any point, if the customer device has to go on time by this time, if it is not happening, we send a communication proactively to the customer saying, hey, sorry, it is delayed. So that monitoring is something the team is working on right now.
We're out of time, so I do want to thank everybody for attending the event, and special round of applause to Kalyani.